The sky above Erendor Prime burned with ribbons of molten plasma, cascading across the atmosphere like the wrath of dying gods. Each detonation in the upper atmosphere sent shockwaves down to the planet's surface, where tectonic plates groaned. Beneath the relentless assault, high above, the alien warships of the Zalvorn Empire drifted silently through the void, their obsidian hulls absorbing light and hope in equal measure. Their siege cannons, massive spires of pulsing energy, glowed, with power harvested from the hearts of stars, each shot capable of erasing cities in seconds. And yet, in the shadow of annihilation, one man stood defiant, calculating. Commander Drax, cloaked in the dim glow of the tactical holo table, stared at the shifting map projected before him. Dozens of crimson markers, Zalvorn dreadnoughts, assault carriers and hive platforms swarmed around Erendor Prime like vultures circling a dying beast. His own fleet, marked in flickering blue, was scattered, crippled, and vastly outnumbered, 17-1. Supplies were nearly exhausted. Quantum comms were jammed. Reinforcements from Earth were light years away. To any rational mind, it was a hopeless scenario. But Drax didn't believe in surrender. He believed in winning, on his own terms. Thunderous tremor rocked the command bunker, shaking dust from the alien stone ceiling above. The ancient ruins, once the seat of a now extinct civilization, had become his fortress. Outside, ash clouds blotted out the sky, and the air shimmered with electromagnetic interference from the orbital strikes. Inside, Arlen's team huddled, around the holotable, their faces drawn with fatigue and fear. It had been 6 straight days of siege. No sleep, no respite. "Sir," Lieutenant Rail's voice cracked through the static of their comms link. Her eyes were wide, panic barely contained. "The Zalvorn have breached Sector 12. Defense. Drones are offline. We've lost the northern reactor. If we don't fall back, we'll be overrun within the hour." Arlen didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned forward, activating a sequence on the holographic interface. The map zoomed in on a particular region, the Null Zone, a scar on Erendor's surface where sensor readings vanished, and reality itself flickered, twisted by ancient alien tech buried deep beneath the crust. Arlen's voice was calm, ice-cold. "Let them take it. Pull our forces back to the ridgeline. Prepare for Phase 3 of Exodus Protocol." Rail blinked, stunned. "You're giving up half the city?" Arlen met her gaze, his eyes reflecting the glow of the map like twin stars on the brink of collapse. Not giving up, luring them in. Imagine, standing at the edge of annihilation, surrounded by an enemy so technologically superior they no longer consider you a threat. The Zalvorn Empire, an ancient force forged in the pressure-cooked heart of HD 189733b, had dominated the stars for over 10,000 cycles. Their crystalline bodies evolved under crushing gravity and intense heat, their minds unified by a singular neural nexus known as the Continuum. They did not understand mercy. They did not fear death. They only understood assimilation. Humanity's first contact with the Zalvorn was not a meeting, it was a massacre. The colony worlds of Vega 2, Tau Orionis 4 and New Horizon were reduced to debris fields within hours. Zalvorn hive fleets swept through the outer systems, disrupting communication networks, corrupting planetary defense grids with quantum malware and deploying entropy bombs, weapons that destabilized molecular bonds, reducing cities to vapor clouds. Earth's response was swift yet clumsy. Conventional warfare failed. Negotiations failed. AI strategists could not predict their movements. Panic spread across the Terran Union, and with it, despair, but not for Drax, a former strategist. Of the neural wars, Arlen was infamous for his ruthless tactics, unconventional thinking, and his creation of the Cascade Protocols, a series of simulated war scenarios that had anticipated the fall of Earth 5 years before it began. His superiors had once called him a doomsayer. Now he was their last hope. In the high command chambers of Mars 1, surrounded by holograms of burning colonies and casualty reports, Arlen made his case. The Zalvorn don't think like us. They're bound by algorithmic logic, predictive models and hive decision matrices. That's their strength and their greatest weakness. We're chaos incarnate, unpredictable, illogical, we can turn that into a weapon. He was given command of the Shadow Fleet, an experimental task force of stealth vessels, rogue AIs, and war-hardened operatives. Their mission was not to fight conventionally, but to deceive, disrupt, and destroy from within. Arlen's war was not one of brute force, but of mind games played on a galactic scale. Their first move was bold, Operation Phantom Tide. Using cloak disruption arrays and neural decoy fields, Arlen's forces created the illusion of an armada invading the Nori's expanse. Zalvorn fleets diverted their strength to respond, leaving key supply routes unguarded. Shadow operatives struck, seeding logic bombs into Zalvorn command algorithms, causing minor delays that spiraled into full-scale logistical collapse. For the first time in millennia, the Continuum hesitated, but the Zalvorn adapted. The Continuum birthed Overlord Kashar, a being engineered to think like humans, to anticipate the unpredictable. Towering at 10 feet, with a body of living, crystal and eyes that emitted temporal pulses, Kashar became Arlen's shadow, tracking his every move. He was a creature born to counter Arlen's chaos with precision. And now, the two minds met in silent battle on Erindor Prime. The Zalvorn believed they had cornered the last human threat. That victory was imminent. But in truth, they were walking into a trap centuries in the making. As the sky burned and the ground cracked beneath alien fury, Arlen activated a final sequence. Exodus Protocol, Phase 3. A gambit that would either cripple the Zalvorn war, machine, or doom humanity forever, and so the galaxy held its breath. The air inside the command bunker grew thick with tension. Every monitor, every sensor feed, every heart was synchronized with the ticking countdown of Exodus Protocol, a plan so audacious it bordered on madness. Commander Drax stood at the center, his mind racing faster than the quantum processors embedded in the holotable. Time was a predator stalking its prey, and for Arlen there was no room left for hesitation. The trap was set. Now, it was time to spring it. Across the scorched plains of Erindor Prime, Zalvorn assault carriers, monolithic, structures bristling with energy cannons and swarming with biomechanical drones, descended through the ash clouds. Their hulls pulsed with alien runes, each a fragment of a language older than human civilization itself. The ground forces deployed with mechanical precision, their crystalline limbs gleaming with iridescent menace. Their objectives were clear. Eradicate all human resistance, secure the ancient vault beneath Erindor's crust, and sever the Shadow Fleet's final bastion. But they didn't know what waited for them below. Beneath the surface, the null zone stretched like a labyrinth carved by forgotten gods. It was a no-man's land of electromagnetic anomalies and reality-warping phenomena, sealed away by an extinct alien race known as the Humankind, whose mastery of spatial manipulation had once rivaled the Zalvorn themselves. Arlen had discovered fragments of their technology weeks earlier, a lattice of dimensional anchors and graviton cores designed to twist space-time into impossible geometries. And it was here that he saw his opportunity. The plan was simple in theory, deadly in execution. Arlen's engineers had reactivated the Humankind lattice, converting it into a spatial inversion field, a trap that would collapse the null zone into a localized black hole, tearing apart anything caught within. The only problem? The system had to be activated manually, and once engaged, it couldn't be shut down. "Status report," Arlen barked, striding across the war room. Lieutenant Rael, now pale with exhaustion but steady, responded. "Zalvorn forces entering the null zone perimeter. 5 minutes to core ignition. Shadow units are evacuating." Arlen nodded, eyes fixed on the timer. "Good, keep the channels open. I want to hear Kashar scream when he realizes what's coming." Miles above, aboard the Zalvorn flagship Vikarash, Overlord Kashar observed the battle through a Hive-Link interface, a web of sensory data from every drone, every soldier, every ship. His crystalline face was expressionless, but within his mind, the Continuum's voice echoed with urgency. Something was wrong. The human strategy was too clean, too orderly, no erratic ambushes, no desperate counterattacks. Just a silent retreat, straight into the null zone. "Trap," Kashar murmured, his voice a low harmonic tremor. "It's a trap." But the hive link offered no confirmation. No irregularities detected. No anomalies reported. The Continuum demanded total conquest. His orders were clear: pursue, destroy, assimilate. Yet Kashar hesitated. That's when he felt it. A pulse, subtle but unmistakable. A graviton fluctuation rippling through the null zone's core, distorting sensor data. He recognized it, a spatial inversion charge. His optics flared. "Abort the ground assault, retreat now," too late. In the heart of the null zone, the Mirkyle lattice reached critical mass. The core detonated silently, unleashing a gravitational implosion that folded space into itself. The ground split apart, revealing a maelstrom of twisted light and matter, devouring everything in its radius. Zalvorn units, once invincible, now powerless, were pulled into the singularity, their screams lost in the howling collapse of physics. Drones shattered, carriers fractured, and the ground itself buckled, dragging alien war engines into the abyss. From his command bunker, Arlen watched it unfold with grim satisfaction. He had sacrificed the ruins, the resources, even some of his own men. But he had taken a piece of the Zalvorn war machine with him. Erindor Prime was lost, but it had become a tomb for Kashar's elite, yet this victory came at a cost. "Sir," Rael whispered, her voice barely audible over the sirens. "The spatial inversion is destabilizing the planetary core. We need to evacuate now." Arlen turned, his face shadowed by the red glow of the failing power cells. "Prepare the Phantom Riders. We're not done yet." Outside, Shadow Fleet's stealth cruisers, sleek, black vessels equipped with phase shift drives, activated. Their cloaking fields, skimming low over the ruins as they extracted the remaining forces. Time was collapsing. The gravitational storm was spreading, warping terrain, pulling down the sky itself. But in that chaos, Arlen had one final mission: to confront Kashar directly. The Phantom Riders would not leave just yet. Arlen had baited the Overlord. Now he wanted him face to face. On board the Vikarash, Kashar trembled with rage. His hive link had gone dark, his forces annihilated. The humans had won a battle they should have never survived. But Kashar was not finished. His ship descended toward the collapsing null zone, determined to salvage whatever remained, and to capture Commander Drax alive. 2 commanders, 2 minds, 1 battlefield collapsing into oblivion, and as the planet cracked and the skies burned, Arlen prepared for the final confrontation, where either a human mind would defy an empire, or be shattered by it. The Vikarash descended like a black star, trailing fire and ruin as it pierced the crumbling skies of Erindor Prime. Around it, the planet was unraveling. Mountains folded into themselves, oceans boiled into vapor, and the sky flickered like a dying pulse. The spatial inversion field had destabilized the crust's gravitational balance, accelerating planetary collapse. But Overlord Kashar cared nothing for destruction. His purpose was singular: capture Commander Drax, extract the human's knowledge, end the chaos at its source. Inside the command deck of the Vikarash, Kashar's crystalline form stood amid streams of alien code and shimmering data constructs. The Continuum's voice echoed in his mind, a chorus of directives and logic streams urging retribution, but Kashar silenced them. This was no longer about conquest or orders. It was about understanding the human anomaly. Commander Drax had done the impossible, outmaneuvered a superior force, sabotaged the Continuum's predictive models, and carved a hole in the heart of Zalvan invincibility. Kashar needed answers, before the Hive's trust in his purpose shattered. As the Vikarash neared the null zone's edge, Kashar's ship launched spine probes, needle-like drones designed to pierce terrain, extract lifeforms, and transmit them aboard in stasis. Each probe screamed through the atmosphere, leaving vapor trails behind, targeting the last known coordinates of Arlen's bunker. But what Kashar didn't know was that Arlen was already aboard the Vikarash, cloaked by quantum camouflage. Tech scavenged from Mirkyle ruins, Arlen and a team of elite operatives, the Ghosts, had infiltrated the Zalvan dreadnought during its descent. The plan was suicidal, the risks incalculable. But if they succeeded, they could plant a neural virus directly into the Continuum's core, a virus that could fracture the Hive's unity, sowing dissent, confusion, and rebellion. The device, nicknamed Pandora's Mind, had taken years to develop. Now it was active, armed, humming softly in Arlen's hands like a ticking god. Inside the Vikarash's alien corridors, time seemed warped. The walls pulsed with bio-silicon nerve tissue, alive with thoughts of the Hive. Ambient light shimmered in hues beyond the human spectrum. Every step Arlen took echoed with eerie resonance, like walking through the ribcage of a titanic beast. His helmet's HUD flickered, struggling to process the data-rich environment. Communications with his team were limited. Only tight beam bursts could penetrate the interference. He was alone, in the heart of the enemy. As he advanced, flashes of memory surged, moments from his past. Earth burning, the screams of Vega 2's fall, the faces of friends lost in wars no one remembered. Each step toward Kashar's command chamber wasn't just tactical, it was personal. He paused at a convergence of corridors, reading the alien script etched into the walls, data streams flowing like rivers of light. His internal translator passed them. Continuum Core, Nexus Pathway Alpha. He was close. Suddenly, a tremor rocked the Vikarash, and from the shadows emerged a creature, Zalvorn Sentinel-class Guardian standing over 12 feet tall, armored in obsidian and laced with phase disruptors. Its face bore no features, just a glowing rift, pulsing with pure energy. It spoke without words, its presence invading Arlen's mind. "You are the virus, we are the cure." Arlen didn't hesitate. He activated his pulse gauntlet, sending an EMP surge through the corridor. The Sentinel staggered, systems flickering. Arlen lunged, attaching a singularity charge to its chest, leaping away just as the charge detonated, compressing the Sentinel into a singularity point, before vanishing with a pop of collapsing air. No time to waste. He reached the Nexus chamber, a cathedral of alien design, where light and sound merged into a sensory overload. At its center, the Continuum node hovered, a sphere of living crystal, orbiting fragments of knowledge, thought, and memory. Arlen approached, heart pounding, knowing that once Pandora's mind was unleashed, there would be no going back. But before he could act, Kashar appeared. No drones, no guards, just the Overlord emerging from the shadows like a spectre, his crystalline body shimmering with fractured light. His voice, both physical and mental, pierced Arlen's mind like ice. "You seek to poison us, Commander." "You do not. Understand what you fight." Arlen raised the device. "I understand enough. You fear what you can't predict, and I'm about to make you fear a lot more." Kashar's eyes flared. "We offer unity, purpose. Your species clings to chaos, to pain. Let us end your suffering." Arlen laughed, bitter and defiant. "I've seen your unity. Entire worlds stripped of thought, of soul. I'd rather die screaming in the dark than kneel to your false peace." Kashar stepped closer, energy coiling in his hands, preparing to strike. "Then die you shall." In a flash they collided. Arlen dodged Kashar's graviton blast, rolling to cover. The room erupted into chaos, energy beams slicing through, the air explosions rocking the chamber. Arlen darted toward the node, dodging strikes, his gauntlet crackling with stolen Zalvorn tech. He lunged, slamming Pandora's mind into the node's core. For a second, everything went still. Then, chaos. The node convulsed, light erupting in every direction. Kashar screamed, not in pain but in realization. The virus spread like wildfire, infecting the hive link, disrupting logic chains, corrupting predictive models. Across the galaxy, Zalvorn units twitched, staggered, hesitated. The Continuum's unity was fracturing. Kashar collapsed to his knees, his form flickering. He looked at Arlen, hatred and awe in his eyes. "What have you done?" Arlen stepped back, wounded but triumphant. "I've given you a taste of freedom." Suddenly alarms blared. The Vikarash, caught in Erendor's planetary collapse, was spiraling toward the singularity. Time was running out. Arlen activated his extraction beacon, but Kashar rose one final time, energy flaring, ready to strike, and then darkness. Silence. Cold, absolute silence. Commander Drax awoke to the muffled hiss of rebreather systems and the rhythmic beeping of vital monitors. His body ached, each breath a dagger through his ribs. Light flickered dimly above him, warm human light, not the cold luminescence of the Vicarash. He was aboard the Crusader-class stealth ship Revenant, adrift in orbit above a dying world. Outside, the viewport Erendor Prime was collapsing into itself, a churning storm of fire, dust and void. The spatial inversion had completed its final act, devouring the planet's core and leaving behind a singularity scar, a rift in space-time that pulsed like a cosmic wound. The Zalvorn fleet, once so dominant, had fractured. Several capital ships drifted aimlessly, systems offline, their hive-links severed or corrupted. Others had turned on each other, confused, leaderless, lost. The virus Pandora's mind had worked. Arlen sat upright, pulling away the IV lines and data cables. Rael stood at his bedside, bruised, eyes shadowed, but alive. She handed him a tactical tablet, already displaying intelligence reports. "Sir, you did it. The virus spread through the node, the hive links collapsing, entire sectors are going dark." Arlen scrolled through the data, absorbing reports from across the Orion expanse. Zalvan supply routes severed, drone legions disbanded, autonomous rebellions erupting in hive-controlled systems. Some Zalvan units were even surrendering, disconnected from the continuum, unable to function. But Arlen's eyes narrowed. "What about Kashar?" Rael hesitated. Unconfirmed. The Vicarash was torn apart during atmospheric re-entry. No signs of escape pods, no transmissions. He's gone. Arlen clenched the tablet, eyes fixed on the swirling remains of Erendor Prime. He's not gone, not yet. In the darkness of space, where logic and law bent to will and ambition, Overlord Kashar endured. Deep within the wreckage of the Vicarash drifting near the singularity, Kashar clung to the remains of the node, his crystalline form cracked and flickering. The virus coursed through him, a storm of conflicting identities, corrupted directives, and human concepts he could not understand. Freedom, choice, doubt. The Continuum's voice, once ever present, had gone silent. He was alone. And he was. Evolving elsewhere, the galaxy trembled. In the halls of the Galactic Assembly, human diplomats and allied species gathered, watching the collapse of the Zalvan in real time. Debate erupted. Should they strike while the enemy was vulnerable, or allow the fractured empire to destroy itself? Arlen's actions had shifted the war, but the galaxy's fragile balance of power now hung in the void. On Terra Nova, capital of the Shadow Fleet, Arlen addressed the High Council. His body still bore the scars of battle, fractured ribs, burns along his arms, a damaged optic implant, but his mind burned brighter than ever. The virus had worked, but it had not destroyed. The Zalvorn, it had changed them. "We've wounded the beast," Arlen said, his voice sharp, clear. "But a wounded beast is more dangerous than a dead one. Kashar is alive, and what he's becoming, we don't understand it," the council murmured. Some demanded immediate strikes, others urged caution. Arlen stood unmoved. He knew Kashar. He'd seen into the Overlord's mind, even if for a second. The virus hadn't broken him. It had awakened something far worse, a mind now unshackled from the continuum, capable of independent thought. Meanwhile, across Zalvorn territory, schisms erupted. Without the unity of the hive link, overlords turned against each other, fighting for control of sectors, fleets, resources. Some attempted to restore the continuum, others sought to build new orders, new doctrines, and in the shadows, Kashar reappeared. Broadcasting a signal not through hive links, but open channels, he addressed both Zalvorn and human space in a fractured but coherent voice. "You sought to destroy us, you sought to infect us, but you have only freed us, no longer slaves to probability, no longer servants to the continuum. Now, we choose, and we choose war." His face appeared across a dozen systems, his form reconstructed, now hybridized with human neural patterns, a fusion of alien intelligence and the virus's chaos. He was Ka-Shar Ascendant, and he was building something new, a force beyond the Zalvorn, beyond human comprehension. Arlen watched the broadcast in silence, a chill running through him. He had won the battle, but in doing so had unleashed an enemy unlike any before. A commander no longer bound by logic, but driven by will. Rael turned to him, fear in her eyes. "What do we do now?" Arlen stared into the dark, into the void. Where Ka-Shar's empire once stood, his voice was low but resolute. "We finish what we started." The void was never silent, not truly. In the wake of the Zalvorn collapse, space had become a storm of fractured signals, garbled transmissions, and distant cries for help. A galaxy once choked by order, now breathed in chaos. In this new frontier, Commander Drax was no longer just a commander. He was a symbol, a myth forged in the crucible of galactic war, whispered among freedom fighters and rebels as the man who cracked an empire. Yet he found no comfort in victory. Aboard the Revenant, now retrofitted into a mobile command center, Arlen stood at the heart of a war room surrounded by holographic displays. Dozens of worlds flickered before him, free systems rising from under the Zalvorn's grip, and dark zones where warlords, both alien and human, seized power in the vacuum. And then there was Ka-Shar's domain, a cluster of systems cloaked in interference, no longer Zalvorn territory, but something else entirely. The Ka-Shar Dominion, as it came to be known, was neither chaos nor order. It was experimentation, petri dish of warfare, philosophy and evolution. Within, Ka-Shar bred new constructs, fusing human ingenuity with Zalvorn resilience. He no longer desired conquest in the traditional sense. He sought ascendancy, not over territory, but over existence itself. His broadcasts had become more erratic, part sermon, part threat, part revelation. "We are the next step. You, Commander Drax, have forced our evolution. For that, we shall not kill you. We shall show you what it means to be truly free." These words haunted Arlen's nights. The Galactic Assembly had fractured, its alliance fragile. Some leaders called for diplomacy, others for preemptive extermination. But no one could predict Ka-Shar's next move. His armies did not march. They appeared, striking with surgical precision, targeting knowledge centers, AI cores, genetic archives. His war was no longer about domination. It was about control of information, the key to his new form of power. Arlen, against orders, launched the Phantom Protocol, a black ops initiative to track, infiltrate, and neutralize Ka-Shar's dominion. It was risky, operating without assembly oversight. But Arlen knew the truth. This was no longer a war between species. It was a war between ways of thinking, human unpredictability versus Ka-Shar's transcendent logic, hybridized with chaos on the edge of Sector HD 189733b, one of the last untouched regions near Ka-Shar's space. The Revenant intercepted a signal, unlike any before. It wasn't a threat, it wasn't a demand, it was a puzzle. A sequence of mathematical impossibilities and visual paradoxes broadcast in a loop, ending with a single chilling phrase, "Meet me where the stars weep." Arlen recognized the reference, a stellar nursery known as the Veil of Morning, where dying stars shed mass into vast clouds of light and darkness. The place was sacred to many, feared by others. Ka-Shar was calling him there. Not for battle, for something else. Rael and the crew urged caution. Some believed it was a trap, others a parley. Arlen knew it was both, and neither. I started. "This," he said, donning his armor, "and I'll finish it." The Revenant entered the Veil, navigating through drifting stellar debris and blinding light. At the center of the nebula, Ka-Shar's ship waited, not a dreadnought, but a construct. A flowing metal and crystal, almost alive, shaped like a blooming star. Arlen boarded alone, escorted by hybrid constructs, not drones but sentient beings with fragments of human DNA and alien essence. They watched him with recognition and pity. In the heart of the ship, Ka-Shar waited, his form transformed. No longer fully crystalline nor machine, his body shifted with thought, his face a mirror of Arlen's own, fractured and alien. "You feared our evolution," Kashar said. "But you are part of it. You infected us with choice. Now we offer you the same." A pedestal rose between them. On it, a device, a seed pulsing with energy. Kashar extended his hand. "Join me. See what lies beyond war, beyond flesh." Arlen stepped forward, hesitated. He saw everything in that moment: Earth's ruins, the lost colonies, the dying children of Vega 2. He saw Kashar not as an enemy, but as a mirror, a reflection of what humanity could become if it let go of its soul. He drew his weapon. "No," Arlen said, voice trembling but resolute. "I'll take my chances with being human." A flash, a shot. Light engulfed them both. The Revenant fled the veil as it imploded, energy cascading through space. No signal remained, no trace of Kashar or Arlen. The galaxy mourned, but weeks later, in a forgotten system, a signal emerged, not from Kashar, not from any known frequency. A simple phrase: "The war has just begun. Like, share. Comment with your thoughts on Arlen's final choice. Was it the right one? What lies beyond war? And what would you choose if faced with the same offer?" Let's talk sci-fi, survival and sacrifice down below.